Good evening and welcome to BT's Fly Tying Friday. Today, December the 8th, we got Paul Fedeles. He's going to talk to us about Aussie flies, and he's already in tomorrow. So he's coming to us tonight from tomorrow, and he's also going to talk about the weekly tip, some kind of a board and clip system. Don't know quite what he's talking about, but we'll find out. Yep, that's Paul in Australia. Hey, there he is. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to start out today by introducing Paul Fedeles, and he comes to us all the way from Port Macquarie, New South Wales, Australia, where he enjoys his retirement from a career in high school sports coaching and teaching. He is an ROTC graduate from Colorado State University. After college, he was commissioned into the U.S. Marine Corps as an infantry officer. He was discharged in 1972 as a captain with 2 Combat Valor Awards and a Combat Action Ribbon earned in Vietnam. In 1973, he immigrated to Australia to become a sports coach. While coaching at Barker College, which is a private high school, his teams racked up 376 wins, 68 of which were consecutive. He earned numerous coaching awards, including the New South Wales ABC Schools Coach of the Year. He started tying flies and fly fishing in 2008 and is a member of the Sydney Fly Rodders, the Hastings Fly Fishers Club, and the Coast Fly Fishing Club. Now, tonight, Paul is going to talk to us about, I called it Aussie flies, and he tried to tell me in a recent email the correct way to pronounce the word Aussie. He said it's Aussie. Anyway, Paul, correct me if you will and get started with your program.
It's Aussie.
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 Okay. I tend to talk a little bit fast, tie fast. So if I go too fast, somebody else slow down. I live in Port Macquarie, which is a coastal city halfway between Sydney and Brisbane. Brisbane, not Bain, right? I don't know if you're interested in Australia, but that's what you're going to get. Port fishing is mainly saltwater and estuaries. Saltwater flies are pretty much all the same, and they become very not interesting to tie, which is a lot of words for boring. Salties, I apologize, right? Freshwater fishing is hours away from where I live, and so I tie mostly freshwater flies and fish less. I log on all of your websites, the Zoom sessions, the blogs, and YouTube, and I think, oh, that's a good fly. So I tie them. I used to tie by the dozens, but eventually there's no more room to put them. So now I only tie 6. All right. And my wife supports me in this reset. She goes with, Paul, you got to stop. So I have boxes of flies and never use hardly any of them. And I really like to tie flies. So if any group needs flies for a good cause or fundraising, let me know, especially veterans groups. Okay. In October, Robin and I went to Dunmore Trout Waters, which is north of Guyra, New South Wales, about a 4-hour drive from port. I was going to find out what are the flies, all these flies in my box, and I hardly ever use them. And there was no surface action. And so we'll have to wait till April when we go back there in April. I'm going to screen share now. Aussie, spelled Aussie. It's not Aussie, it's Aussie. Okay. And most of these flies are still water. So I took all my fly boxes and I fished for 2.5 days with Robin. And the plan was I'd do 10 to 15 minutes with each fly, and I get 1 trout or 2 redfin, and I change flies. All the flies that are there, I left, hooked up to that phone for the next people coming in, and told them that all these flies work. If you want to buy some, get in touch with me. And the one on the left, as Robin talked about, is I caught a 10-pound turtle. All right. And it took me a while to tow it in. Took me a while to get the hook out, and I released it. And the next thing you know, he was back in the water going after them again. Now, this is my Australian recreational talk. Australia's 6th largest country. And if you look at the areas, all these green areas is pretty much where the population is. And this area in here is called the Outback because there's pretty much nothing there. And then like this town here is 1,100, and the largest town is Alice Springs. Port Macquarie is about this area here. Now, Australia has no major main predators. So when the English came out, they all, you know how English people love carp. So they brought the carp out, put them in the rivers, and they just took over. And so now this is carp. These are all these redfin fish I'll talk about later. They bring the horses. See, I'm talking too fast again. They brought the horses out. Some of them are released, and now in the snowy mountains, I think everybody's seen the man from Snowy River. Well, there's about 400,000 of these brumbies in the. They brought camels out before there was road transportation, and they brought the camels out from Afghanistan. And around the 1900s, when they started to have roads and stuff, they let them go. So now there's 1 million of them running around, and they fight the animals, you know, the cattle and after the water, and so they have to get rid of them. The guy also brought out European deer, monkeys, the water buffalo. They brought them in the Northern Territory for food for the settlements. Well, they abandoned the settlements and they abandoned the buffaloes. So now they got the largest feral population of buffaloes. And my favorite one is the cane toads. They brought the cane toads out to eat the cane-eating beetle. Well, the cane toads eat everything but the beetle. Anything that moves and can fit in their mouth, they eat, but they don't eat the beetles. And the thing about them is there's nothing they can do. Their eggs are poisonous. Their tadpoles are poisonous. If the animals bite the cane, that's poison from the body. And the only way they get it is during the breeding season. People go out at night and collect bucket loads of them, just pick them up and put them in buckets, and then they put them into a freezer. Now, the redfin perch was also brought out from England. It's a great fighter, and the big ones are pretty tasty. And it's illegal to release them, move them, sell them, buy them. The rule at Dunmore is you had to kill them. We would catch them, kill them, bop them in the head, leave them on the ground, and the birds would eat the eyes overnight. And then you'd pick them up and put them in a big bin where they burn them. And then the little thing at the bottom there, the redfin eat everything. And the thing about it is that the redfin eggs are a gelatinous mess that the other fish won't eat. Yet the redfin eat the rainbow's eggs and all the other stuff. At Dunmore, there was lots of small ones, and they put a lot of larger trout in. So now there's the redfin are getting bigger and almost big enough to where you could keep them and eat them. Now, this is about fly tying, so I better bring out something about fly tying. My soft tackle SOP, my only tying threads is a Gordon Griffiths 14-0 woolly nylon and invisible sewing thread. I have the disease that Al talks about where a couple of more turns really doesn't matter. Well, with the 14-0, I can get away with it. I start my thread at the 3/4 point, use that as a guide. My tails were either too long, too short, where they be. So I said, screw it. I'm making every tail I ever have. I'm going to make it the same size. So what I do now is I measure the tail length of the hook shank, I trim it, and tie it in at the halfway point. Everything's the same. Same with the ribbing material. I take it back and I start the ribbing material back to the tail because I pull out so many times you go to rib and you pull it out. So I start at the front and rip it back, tie in the hackle tips, pull it back to hackle. Everybody does that. The big secret is I use a hair dryer to train all, we call it style. I style all my soft tackle fibers so that they go in the right direction. My favorite flies at Dunmore were these. Anything big, any of the big streamers, they just didn't want. This is the smaller one. If you look at it, I got my bad. I got a gold bead right here. A copper bead, sorry. I just put this next one here. That's a paintbrush. I got all these ideas from Dave Wilson. That's a paintbrush. This one here is, there are no gray squirrels in Australia, so I got this squirrel, but there is some Aussie crystal flash. Now, my plan was to tie a wood duck soft tackle. And so I looked up information about the wood duck. And we have a retention pond at the end of where I live. And weeks ago, 10 wood ducks actually showed up, a whole family of 10 wood ducks. was the first time they'd been there in like 4 years. And on the 4th of December, I went down and counted. There were 28 wood ducks, 7 swamp hens, and 1 black-headed egret. Now, my record sighting at the pond were 32 kangaroos and 36 egrets. This is one of the members is a shooter, and he shoots the wood ducks and actually eats the breast. Well, and so this is the wood duck. I've been using it here. This one actually is green, but no matter how many pictures I took, it came out that color.
That wood duck looks different from our wood ducks.
Yeah. And remember last week we learned about using these things so your bottles don't tip over? Well, I use it to hold the hooks when I'm getting ready to do it. I bought this at Tywell. It used to be the size of a softball, and it's a all roll of chenille. The fringe here is actually curtain fringe that you get, and if you take the rubber band off and spread it out, it's 1 meter wide. The possum, I just cut the possum off the possum fur, put it in a coffee grinder and mixed it up. I use all the bits. The external part of the possum is dark, and then the internal is a lighter color, but I mixed them all together. And this is the metallic thread that I use for the last fly. And I put this in here because there's a sort of a rivalry between Queensland and New South Wales. And the beer in Queensland is called 4X, and we say that's because they're too dumb to spell beer. This is the wood duck. I was looking forward to fishing this. Second cast, I caught a rainbow trout. Well, the plan was that I would fish a fly for 15 minutes, and if I didn't catch anything, it would go in the loser's pile. If I did catch something, if it was a trout, I would catch 1 trout, and that was it, go in the winner's pile. And if I caught 2 redfin, well, like the second cast on the wood duck, I caught an 18-inch rainbow. These are the four favorite buzzers that I used. The top one, I used the thread as a rib, and what I did was woolly nylon the body, and then woolly nylon the black head, coated it with UV resin, and then used the thread as a ribbing, and then recoated it again with resin. And the next one, I had all this cheap Chinese junk chenille, and I thought, what the heck, I'll just wrap it around the hook and see what happens. Well, that's what the stuff is. I apologize to America, but I got it on AliExpress from the Chinese, and that cost $8 Australian, plus it was free postage for all those. And these are the 2 flies. Now, this is called a gold ribbon buzzer. I'm going to tie this one, and it's made from gold ribbon floss. Now, Dave Wilson, my mentor, taught me how to tie flies. Had a class, and he showed us how to make floss out of the gold ribbon. I used to, whenever the class was over, I'd go around and scrounge up all the materials that were left laying on the table, and he used to come over. He gave me the bar. I still have that ribbon that he gave me. I also got down here at the bottom. Dave has a course on tying flies. You learn the 20 top techniques, and you can tie any flies. His code word is, if you can tie your shoes, you can tie flies. And I highly recommend the fly tying skills course that he has there. Now, this is my fly, the Madam X blowfly parachute hopper. In Australia, we have this fly that's called a blowfly. I don't know why they got them in the US, but what happens is that the flies are fairly large, and they actually spit eggs, and they actually shoot sometimes the maggots into your food if you left laying it around. Or what they do is they cut the tails off of the sheep, because if otherwise they get the flies would spit the maggots into the rear end of the sheep, and they get fly blown. And so I took the Madam X and had the blowfly and the parachute. And the big thing is that I prepare the metallic thread. I spray it with Scotch Guard and then hang it in the sun until it dries out. And even then, you have to coat the Scotch Guard with the Payette paste before you fish When I used it in the Threadbow River, I caught 6 fish in a rainstorm. You know, and the thing is when you travel 6 hours for freshwater fishing, you fish weather unless there's lightning and hail. And that was when the rain sort of cut back slower. This is the tying steps to the fly. Is Gary Begley on? He showed last time on is one of his. I was on his Zoom session and he showed the technique, and so now I call it the Begley, and we'll use that to tie in the rug.
Yeah, Paul, I'm here.
Okay, I call that a Begley.
That's
Where
fine.
you tie it to rubber legs. And the only fish I didn't use, and if I had one fish to fly anywhere, it would probably be the flashback pheasant-tail nymph with the mini white and center. I didn't use it when I went to Dunmore this time because the last time it just wasn't fair. I was catching so many fish. I was like 13 trout and 50 redfin. And the whole thing about the legs is that I make them long. And when you retrieve it, all the legs fold up against the body. And when you stop it, they all spring out and it drives the crowd crazy. You know, it flops out. So it's like, okay, now, if anybody wants that PowerPoint presentation, just email me and I'll send it to you. No, tie slow. Now you showed your method of putting on lead wire because you tie 10,000 flies and you don't want to waste wire. This is the way I do mine. So I use pretty much the same and you don't waste any wire. And what I do is I leave a gap between the bead and the lead, so there's room for the fly or the hackle when I tie it in.
Is that a jig hook?
Sorry? Yeah, it's a jig hook, barbless jig hook. It's got a glass bead on it, so that's why it needs a wire. And I've got my crystal flash which is from the fringe, curtain fringe that you buy it from the Spotlight store. You get a meter for $6, not $6.95. Hold them up. Crystal. Enough for life. Okay, now I've got the tail feather of the wood duck. And I learned from Al that you pull the stem away from the feather. And I get it. Pretty lousy piece of feather. Okay, now what I do is I measure the length of the tail. Trim it, tie it in at halfway. Now I don't suffer from crank fingers, nails, and all the thing that you guys. My problem is I suffer from the fact that my hands are soft as a baby's bum because I never worked in my life like you guys do, and so I actually have to moisten my fingers to get anything done when it comes to my dubbing. I get a clump of dubbing, moisten my fingers. Now I'm putting this stuff on really loose, and I want lots of it, and I don't want it to be neat. Now, if you're a bronze, silver, or gold award winner, I don't want to hear any screams of anguish and moans about the way I tie flies. Then I reverse. And when I get my little fancy Velcro thing, beat it up. And what I do with the fly, these are the breast feathers from the, and I tie that in by the tip. And see how the feathers are stuck together? Well, I use my Velcro to take them apart. You think that really looks crappy. Now, the most important thing about this part is you make sure that you do not point your hair dryer at your scrap box or your waste box.
The direction that you're putting the heat gun at it, is it blowing towards the eye of the hook or towards the bed?
Wait, sorry. And the longer it flies, and then you wind up, it looks pretty good. And the best part about it is it catches fish.
Okay, well, as you can see there, he's going to be using another
This is a pretty
barbless
easy
bait
job.
hook, size 14. Thread's
Yep.
black. Bead is orange. The tail is the Aussie wood duck. And the body is gold
Aussie.
ribbon floss,
Aussie.
and the collar is peacock curl.
Now, the first thing is the gold ribbon. Now, if you start pulling on this end and you get material like that, that's the wrong end. You come to this end and you pull it out, and you get enough of the gold ribbon floss. That's how it's got its name, ribbon. I'll use the gray fly again.
What kind of ribbon is that, Paul?
It's just have to ask Dave Wilson. He bought it. That's what it looks like. Or you get the other kind of ribbon. You get this everyday ribbon. It's an organza ribbon. There's not much of this one left, but you actually peel it. You trim off the edge, and you peel it, and you wind up with the same stuff. Okay, so I'm going to put the tail on it. Wood gut tail. This is for Mike Kelly, if he's there, 9 or 5 pieces. Measure the length, cut it off, tie it in at halfway. I used to do little bits, and I thought, geez, I got enough of this stuff, so I'll just do overkill. So I get a big hunk, cut it short, tie it in at the beginning so that when you go to wrap it, you don't pull it out like I used to do all the time. I don't know who showed me this technique, but it's good. You use the
That is a Dutch Bachman technique that he shared with us.
Yeah.
If you
I watch Zoom. I join in a lot of these Zoom things, and you usually can get one or two really good tips, which makes the whole thing worthwhile. Now you wonder, why did I pick this fly? Well, when you're little, when you're young, and you're outside shooting hoop, and your mother calls you for lunch or for dinner, sorry, and you've got like 8 or 9 shots in a row, and you got a streak going, well, you don't want to come in, so you keep hurrying and hurrying. Well, that was this fly here. It was getting near dinner time. I'm casting it 5 casts in a row. I've got a fish, right? And my wife goes, dinner, dinner, dinner. And I go, one more cast. I get 6, I get 7, and then now you got to go. So I'm catching 7 fish on this one fly. And that's the Dave Wilson gold ribbon fly. And most of the time, all I would do is strip, pause on just about all the flies. And and then when I fish at still water, I have my braided leader and 4 feet of tippet. Anything less than 4 feet, the braided leader sort of scares the fish away.
So while he's changing jaws, we'll show you the recipe for the Madam X blowfly. You've got a size 10 or 12 hook, 2X long. The thread is Griffin's shear. The tail is makeup brush. The wing is crystal chenille. The underbody is blue or green DMC, and he's got some numbers there for you. The post is some special yarn sent from Boise, Idaho, all the way to Port Macquarie. The legs are medium round rubber legs. Thorax is black marker. The hackle is brown or black. Back to that special Boise poly yarn actually came all the way from Canada to Boise, then to Australia.
Couldn't get any more tangled than if I tried. I'm just going to use gray instead of black, so we're not. I'll get my makeup brush, which you don't have to stack because they're always the same. Measure the fly, trim the tail, tie it in at halfway. Now this is that ball of chenille. I used to tie a single strand over, and now I've changed and I use a double strand. So you put the 2 bits together. Now coat the top of this mess. A bit of Sally Hansen's. I don't want to tie these too tight because I want to use the foam to make a body, so I don't have to use as much of the thread. I used to use a whole strand. You break it in half. I even cut it back now to where I only use two bits of the metallic thread. Push like you taught me how. No, it's not big enough. Proportions didn't look good. Now what I do here is I take some Sally Hansen's. This is supposed to be the wings. And I coat the top of the foam with the Sally Hansen's. When you trim it, don't trim it short because it could pull out. And then the only thing I do next is I'll cut that out of the way. And the reason why I fold it because polyarn's a mess. When you tie it, it goes everywhere. So I fold it. Trim this bit out of the way. And post it up. Little rebar there. Now I get my feather, which is a, what's it called? It's a Herbert Minor wet fly hackle. And now this is where the Begley comes in. I'll watch him tie this. And he puts the thing back, but these are in the way, so I bring it up and around and over. This is hard to get a good wrap for all the junk on the back. I use gray thread, so I have to darken the bottom. And that one you don't have to cast very well. You just slap it out and hope.
Paul, Alan Curie says, great instruction and entertaining presentation. Thank you.
Did you see it? Okay. Now the clips, I apologize once again to all the slaves in China that make the clips. That's a board. You drill holes, you buy the clips, you drill holes into the board. You got the clips. I put these things here, and this is for some flies that you get are too big. It's a it's a chain, and you just hook the flies on that. And that's the way I set up all my stuff to tie. And there's my tools, scissors, and all my. And this little thing here this is a wire brush that you use to clean off your tools and stuff. I'm trying to think of the lathe. Say you got a lathe and you got a metal lathe. These are the metal bits, or the little, it's real stiff plastic. And you tie them and you make knots. And this is a fly I tied using these as legs and a part of a photo album as a wing. And it was good because the legs will break the surface film and actually hang in the water, whereas the rest of the fly sits on top. And now I use that at when I went to Oberon, and I used to play in the fast waters and stuff. And then there's my email. So I'll send anybody who wants to get this PowerPoint if you want it, or if your group needs some flies, I'm happy to send flies if you want them. I know I sent some to John.
Okay.
Okay, there you are. I'm going to replace you now. You've got the spotlight and you've drawn Paul's flies. There we go. Good. The wood duck.
Yeah, and here's the orange.
Orange and gold buzzer. Wonderful. Thank you.
And here's the Madam X.
Love it.
Better
There
than
you
the
go,
fly.
Paul. We
It
have an
looks better than
American
the fly.
we have an
There you go,
American artist using your lead from Australia. This is pretty great. Okay, you've got the spotlight.
I bought these on the internet. It's a mitt. They're called mitten clippers. And you know how you always get when you're trying to get your the fly out and you're trying to use it and they always get stuck. These are spring loaded. And so like when you click it, you can unclick it. They're Dr. Slicks. They're called mitten clippers or whatever. You get a little string on it and whatever. But they're quite nice.
Yeah, so I took that off and I took a piece of old fly line and made a loop and tied a knot inside the mitten clamp. So then I have a nice, just a soft piece of fly line coming out.
Good idea.
And then I connected to that, and it doesn't hurt my hand. But I love the mitten clamps. It's all I carry on my to clips, because they have those have a scissor on them in addition to the clamp part, so you can tip it and whatnot with it, and you can also grab your fly with it.
A hook clear.
They're really nice. Yeah, that too. Yeah, they're just super.
Okay, just a minute, Jim. Let me get you up here. All right, I'm looking at it. What is it? Looks like a calf or a bucktail.
It's a bucktail, yeah. But what I found out is there's basically to make good use of it. If you're a streamer fly fisherman, you find that bucktail tends to float, and it also tends to flare when you tie it down. But if you take a bucktail, and now I'm going to turn it around, and you divide it into 3 parts, you can break it. And this lower section is that this stuff flares when you pinch it. It flares. But the top section, if the top third, when you take it, these hairs on the end don't flare. When you press on them, they just stay right there.
Oh,
and you can tie down, and the upper ones, they're not hollow like the lower ones. So if you're tying a streamer that you want to go under the water, this, you break it, and this is the part that you use, the upper section. This middle section, these up in here they don't flare very much. And these even down here don't flare very much, but they are better for use on a floating fly, because the bases do have some hollowness to them. So it's just a different way of using your bucktail. And whenever I get them, I do the same thing with the calftail, because sometimes on calftail, what you're trying to do is get into some pieces and you pull it back, and by the time you cut with scissors, you end up cutting some good calftail. Or you find that the longer fibers are up towards the end and the shorter ones are at the base. But if you break that in half or in thirds, you get right to the good fibers that you want. You know, here's this section here. All I do is go like that. And it breaks real easy.
I've got troubles, and hopefully you can see it. I got troubles feeling the end of the tippet. So when I spool my line back up, I can't find it. And so I just took and put a set of small hackle pliers on the end of my tippet. Now I can easily find my tippet when it's in my rod sock, reel bag, and whatever.
Okay, well, we're going to do a throwback to last week and share one with you, continue what we were working on last week with a follow-up and a spotlight for everyone. And we're going to switch over to the materials area. And I want you to notice over here on the left, we've got centipede legs. It's from Montana Fly Company. Gretchen, if you'll go back to the 2 camera. And what we did is we used these centipede legs, and these are rubber leg material, but I want you to notice how small they are. I mean, these are micro rubber leg material. And what I did is the fly that I'm holding up here right now that's on the right is the one I tied last week. It's a number 12 emerger with hackle on it. And here's the one I tied earlier today with the rubber legs on it. And I've decided that I like the rubber legs better. However, that said, Mike Kelly from Nebraska sent me some flies, and here's one that he sent me, and he used Cola Canard for the legs. Just some ideas of adding to that fly that we were working on last week. So if anyone's interested, there's some additional ideas, but we really recommend this Montana Fly Company centipede legs. And that's basically it for this week, unless someone else has something to share. Hey, everyone, thank you so much for joining us tonight. For now, it's a wrap. Next Friday, come back and join us. You never know what you'll find out.